How's it going? For an update on the boat, I've taken the keel, which I think will be easier to see from the front. I've taken the keel and laid it down. It was previously in between these two support structures, just sort of standing up at an angle, and I wasn't able to get to the bottom. So the real challenge so far has been that the original keel was epoxied, which isn't generally a problem, I don't think, but on the bottom it was either not epoxied very well, or over time that barrier was broken and some rust had gotten in. And so you can see the blue is paint and the white layer is some fairing, epoxy with a fairing compound in it. And then this sort of clear, not clear, but opaque, but not white layer right there, that's the epoxy itself. And then in places, I've gotten down to just bare metal, which you can see, for example, right here. That's just bare metal. And the brush seems to be doing a fairly good job. So I'm using a wire brush on a grinder and a hammer and chisel. Because in some places, for example right here, it's easier to get it started with a chisel. I sincerely hope that the rest of this will go faster. Sorry, the camera's moving all around here. But this has taken a long time. This is a couple hours worth of work here. Just I've done maybe a third of the bulb. And then it's going to have to be flipped over once this whole side is done and the other side done. But I'm not trying to get all the epoxy off, just the epoxy that's either covering rust, which, last thing I wanted to point out here, I think what happened is, it's hard to tell, but there's sort of there's a glare from the sun right now, but there's sort of there are shiny spots where I believe somebody, you can see it right here, okay, where I'm pointing. This shiny stuff is epoxy that went over rust, fairing compound, paint. And I think what happened maybe is somebody pulled it out of the water and saw the rust and didn't want to sand and grind the whole thing down, so they just threw some epoxy over the whole thing, including the rust. So I have to get that off. I have to get the metal clean where there's rust showing through. There were spots where there was rust. I think I've hit a lot of them, but a lot of them looked just like this. Just some rust coming through the paint. And on the bottom, obviously, it looked a lot worse. So anyway, that's where we are. After that, the keel has to go. We're going to just straight epoxy the keel. Some people have posted videos or photographs where they used a rust lock or some kind of primer on the keel before they put the epoxy on, and I was told by somebody who's done this over and over, and just after seeing how strong of a bond this epoxy forms with the metal, which is how this was done, just epoxy straight onto metal and then a fairing compound and then paint. But after seeing how strong of a bond the epoxy forms with the metal itself, I'm not inclined to use any kind of rust lock or anything like that. Once we get it down enough to a combination of epoxied parts that are cleaned underneath and bare metal that has been cleaned and rust removed, then I'm just going to put epoxy back on it. Okay, after that we're going to tackle the bottom and whatever this mess is. I have no idea what they put on the hull there. Okay, alright, sorry I'm not a great videographer, but this is what you get.